Look at this beautiful fabric. Look at how cute it is. Oh, I can't even. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Red Brick House. My name is Susan and this is my crafting channel, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about a fabric that's quickly becoming my favorite, which is cotton gauze. Now, some might argue that linen is the best, fabric for summer. It's light and airy, keeps you cool in the summertime. But here are my thoughts on that. 100% linen is a little bit hard to find unless you order it online. Every time I walk in a store, I don't really find 100% linen. I find linen blends and things like that, but I very rarely can find 100% linen. And cotton gauze you can find just about everywhere. I have found it just about every fabric store I've been into, unless it's just a strictly more quilting type store. But cotton gauze is very much available. And linen's also quite expensive. I mean, for me it is. I know those things are kind of relative for you, but compared to cotton gauze, it's probably twice as much money per yard that you're gonna pay, at least, where I've seen it anyway. Cotton gauze is just more affordable, and it usually comes in a lot of different colors and prints to choose from. So I will tell you, it is quickly, I keep looking at it. I need to move it so I'm not looking down. But it is quickly becoming my favorite summertime fabric. For a long time I was a little bit worried of working with it because I felt like it was a fussy fabric or something that was a little bit maybe difficult to work with. And that's what I wanted to really talk about today. I'm going to walk you through like the basics of from pre-washing all the way to the end of a garment. I'm going to be making some pajama shorts out of these as we talk about the things that I have learned. So we'll start out talking about pre-washing. Now, I am a big proponent of pre-washing my fabric, especially when it comes to making clothing, just any fabric in general, because for one, it's good to pre-shrink it so that that first wash and dry, people will tell you wash and dry it the way you're going to once your garment is complete, especially when it's clothing. When it comes to cotton gauze, it's much flatter on the bolt in the store when you buy it than it is after it's been pre-washed. After you wash it and dry it, that's when it kind of scrunches up and you get that lovely texture of cotton gauze. Now, some people tell you to wash it and then iron it before you cut out your pattern. Well, I don't know if I agree with that, because here's the thing. Like today I'm making pajama pants or shorts, and I'm not going to be ironing these shorts. So I want a good representation when I cut it out of what my fabric's going to be, right? So when it comes to clothing and the fact that I'm not going to be ironing this, I love this texture. I want to keep that texture. I don't really want to flatten it out, so I would never iron this. Even if they weren't pajama pants or shorts, I would not iron it. So I'm not going to iron it before I cut out my pattern. This fabric does, because it scrunches up like that after it's washed, I would recommend buying a little bit extra. So if you're following a pattern and it tells you to buy 2 yards of the fabric, I would buy 2.5, because like I said, once you wash it, it doesn't necessarily shrink, but it kind of just, I don't know, it just kind of scrunches up and it's smaller. You can call it shrinking if you want. It shrinks up a little bit. So you'll want a little bit extra. So that, if you think about that and relate that to clothing, when you wear it, it will give back to that more flat appearance. But I would rather run the risk of my shorts being too big than too small, because being too small is a no-go, right? Being a little bit too big I can deal with. I don't want it to be too small. So that's the reason why in my personal opinion, I do not care to iron it before I cut out my pattern pieces. Now, so once you cut everything out, let's talk about pins and needles. So a lot of people on the internet will tell you, oh, you need brand new pins, you need super sharp pins, or it's going to snag your fabric. I did not find this to be true. I had zero problems with snagging. The first project I made, I did not change out my sewing needle, and I just used the pins that I always use. Now, with that said, pins can be a little tricky because the pins that I have, they're old. They're super, super old. Like, my mom bought them for me in the 90s, y'all. They're that old. I'm still using them. And so they're not dull and they're not sharp, but I didn't have any trouble whatsoever. However, I will say that I bought recently some new pins because they were cute, and they were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. Those pins, they might snag my fabric. I did not use those. I just used my tried and true pins that I always use, and they worked just fine. I didn't have any trouble. So I don't think you need new pins. I just think you need good quality pins, okay? So if you don't have trouble with your pins snagging your other fabrics you're working with, I don't think necessarily automatically you're gonna have a problem with this fabric, okay? That's just my opinion. All of these things I'm saying today, of course, will be my experience and my opinions, and yours might be different, and that's totally fine. Now let's talk about sewing needles in your sewing machine. Like I said, the first project I made with this, I did not change out my needle. It was just a standard regular needle. It wasn't new, but it wasn't old either. It was kind of newish, and I didn't have any troubles with snagging, but I did notice that that particular needle left kind of big holes in the fabric where the stitch line was. So say you sewed something and then you needed to take that out or whatever, it would leave behind those holes, and I think that's just the way this fabric is woven. That might just happen anyway. So after that first project, I switched over to using a knit needle. These were needles, a little package of needles I bought that had some of them were labeled jersey, and then a couple of them in the package were just labeled knit. Those are the ones I used. I do believe they have a ballpoint on them. Some people call them ballpoint needles. But it was a thinner needle, and it worked much better. My stitches looked a lot better, and so I would recommend that. I also would recommend lengthening the stitch length. So typically I sew like 2.5 on my machine. I have a Brother machine, and it's kind of a digital screen, so I sew at a 2.5. And for my cotton gauze projects, I sewed them with a 3 or a 3.5. I think I tried both, and I don't really have a preference between those two numbers, but I wouldn't go lower than a 3, because when you have little tiny stitches like that with this fabric, the fabric can kind of get bunched up a little bit. That was my my experience anyway. So using that longer stitch length helped to kind of let my fabric flow through there a little bit easier, if that makes sense. And so another thing I wanted to talk about was a walking foot. The first project I made with cotton gauze, I did not use a walking foot, and I was making a baby blanket, and I did notice that the seam lines were a little bit wobbly and ripply, and it didn't look the best. It turned out okay in the end, but I didn't love how that looked. So I switched over to a walking foot, and then I just kind of did all of my cotton gauze or knit, all of those projects that need a walking foot. I kind of just did those projects back to back. So that helped me a lot. I will recommend the walking foot. After using that, I didn't have any more trouble, especially when making baby blankets. And I had watched a couple of videos of how other people made baby blankets, and nobody mentioned a walking foot with this cotton gauze, and I'm not sure why, because it worked wonders for me in my projects. So I wanted to share that with you, that the walking foot helped a lot. Now I am going to kind of circle back to the ironing. So in the beginning I talked about how I wouldn't iron the fabric before I made the shorts. Whenever I make shorts, I like to fill my seams. You could do a different type of seam finish. I don't have a serger, and I don't know, I don't find that zigzagging helps as much as just having a nice clean seam. And so whenever possible, I try to fill my seams. And with this fabric, it's quite tricky to fold over fabric and press it down. And in the process of doing that, you are going to flatten out those, you're going to flatten out all the little texture and bumpiness when you do that, because it's kind of hard not to iron that, you know, to get that good seam finish. Even when you're hemming, I also found that the fabric would kind of curl up or like come undone, and so sometimes I had to use pins to hold it down until I could get it to the sewing machine and sew it, whereas with cotton woven fabrics I don't have that problem. Whenever I'm doing a hem or anything, I really don't pin anything. I just iron it down and then I just take it to my sewing machine and sew it up. But this fabric wanted to not stay together, which is really weird, because when you put two pieces of the fabric together, it kind of clings together. But when you're trying to do a hem, it does not work the same way, let me tell you. So I just wanted to mention that. Now a little bit about the shorts that I'm making today. But I think they turned out super cute. I'll tell you about my pattern. The pattern I used is this New Look pattern here. Now I used this pattern to make my linen pants earlier this spring, last spring, and today I'm using the shorts. It's the same pattern, they're just shorter. That's all they are. And I really wanted to try that out because I've really been needing some shorts to wear under my skirts and or to wear to bed or around the house, you know, and I think these are just, this fabric is a perfect fit for that purpose. And so I think they turned out really, really cute. I'm really happy with them. They fit great. They're so comfortable, y'all. They're like wearing air. I mean, like, I can't even tell you, if you don't have a pair of cotton pajama shorts and you sleep hot or it's hot where you are, let me tell you, these are fantastic. So like I said, this fabric is quickly becoming my new favorite summer staple because it's available. You can find it in lots of colors and prints and patterns, and it's affordable, and it's great for summertime. And that's really what I need here where I live, because here in Texas it's hot from pretty much from March to November. So, you know, we wear summer clothes. We don't wear like, oh, I'll have my spring wardrobe and my summer wardrobe and my fall. We don't have that here. We have our hot clothes that we wear when it's hot, and then we have our winter clothes, which is like a minuscule amount of clothes because it's not really that hot cold here. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you my thoughts and my feelings and my experience of working with this fantastic fabric. So is it a fussy fabric? I mean, maybe some might think so. I don't think it's that bad. I don't. Now that I've worked with it, at first I kind of hesitated for a long time to pick this up and use it, but I really wanted to sew with it, and that ambition just took over my fear of what might happen if I sew with it and mess something up, you know. So I'm so glad I did, because I absolutely love it. And I think that anytime you work with a new fabric, you're gonna learn how to cope with it. You know what I mean? I think that there's always a learning curve when you're trying something new or working with a new textile. You're going to find what works for you and what doesn't. And these are some things that worked for me, and some things that you hear on the internet that might not be as important as other people might stress. that they are. And you know, I think that all comes from our own experiences. So take that, you know, with a grain of salt. And I hope that you will share your experiences in working with cotton gauze in the comments, because I would love to hear what, you know, what's it been like for you if you have worked with this. And if you are a beginner and you have not worked with it and you're kind of afraid to, don't be. Let me tell you, you will find your own way, and you will find that you absolutely love this fabric. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week where I'm going to draft a pattern to make a shirt to go with these shorts. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.